We're gonna guess the hosts, hey. We're gonna host the guests, hey. We're gonna rank them all to find out who's the best. Hey. We're hosting till the world stops turning, and we'll host it to the ground tonight.
It's episode 23 of Guest Host Raw, the series where I look at every episode of the guest host era of Monday Night Raw. First things first, I just wanted to say my condolences to the friends and family of NASCAR legend and one-time guest host of Raw, Kyle Busch. Literally moments before I was going to sit down and record this video is when the news broke. My comment section was flooded with memories and condolences for Kyle in the video I did about he and Joey Logano's episode. And, that's really tragic to hear. Just to think about, he is my age at 41. That puts things in a crazy perspective. I wasn't a follower of NASCAR, but I understand how big of a name he is in that world. And so, yeah, my heart goes out to all the fans. But moving on to lighter news, even though it is still kind of a down bit of news. I guess it depends on your perspective, but I know a lot of us might have been expecting Little People's Court to be happening on this episode of Raw from November 30th, 2009 at the Marina Arena in Baltimore, Maryland, because, last week DX was handed the summons by Short Sleeve Samson, and they said Little People's Court next week. Like, they made it very clear that it was happening. And not only that, this week's guest host is famous little person Verne Troyer, who's best known for playing Mini-Me in the Austin Powers movies and things like that. So you would think that he would be somehow involved in Little People's Court, which was, advertised for this week. Well, long story short, we don't get Little People's Court in this week's episode. In fact, we don't get it for another 3 or 4 weeks after this show. So what's the deal? I'm sure the question on everyone's mind watching this week's episode of Guest Host Raw is, where's the Little People's Court? Why no Little People's Court? Essentially, from my research looking into this, it seems like there was a lack of communication in terms of the details and trying to coordinate the number of extras involved in this, how many would be getting speaking roles, that sort of thing, and to the point where there was no time to get this all coordinated for the following Monday. So they had to push it back. But how far? Because they didn't want to sacrifice the build for TLC, so they had to wait essentially until after the pay-per-view to do it. So they're really now having to stretch it out a lot longer than they originally planned for. So now you have this issue where you've booked this guy clearly as a gag to tie in with a skit you were going to do that now you're not able to do. So what do you do with Verne Troyer on a show like this? Well, we're about to find out. Also, side note, they mentioned the week before that Verne Troyer was from Baltimore and he was coming back home to host, and it turns out he's not actually from there. Why would they say that then? The show begins with the status quo Jeri-Show making their way to the ring, and man, the commentary all night feels particularly unenergetic and uninspired. But man, they're reading straight off the copy for this one, talking about the TLC match in a couple of weeks, where Michael Cole's just like, can you imagine if the Big Show swings a ladder? And Lawler goes, well, how can you put the Big Show through a table? And Cole goes, well, what happens if Shawn Michaels does an elbow drop off a ladder? Oh, well, what if the Big Show tries to climb a ladder? Jeri-Show are here to clear up some misconceptions and to wake all you sheeple up, because DX, despite what everyone says, they're not the greatest tag team of all time. I'm not sure anyone is actually saying that. Even fans of DX wouldn't say that they're the greatest tag team of all time. But they're here to issue a rebuttal, a retort, if you will, as to why Jeri-Show is actually the greatest. I like the way they do this, by the way, because the presentation is a bit unique in that their backs are to the big screen, and they've got a slideshow and kind of a PowerPoint presentation, essentially, in the background to illustrate their points without them ever looking at it. They're just saying, here's what the facts are. The screen is framed in between them. I thought that was kind of neat. So they say they're going to expose DX with this. Jericho begins by saying, we've been tag team champions for the last 4 months. We've taken down every team that's ever been put in front of us. We won our belts the first day of our existence. Meanwhile, DX has been around since '97 and they've never won tag titles together. So what's up with that? The Big Show chimes in and says that DX are frauds, and they may have all their merch sales and selling books and t-shirts and all that, but once they get through mangling their faces beyond recognition, all that merch of theirs will be just worthless garbage. which I'm not entirely sure is how merchandise like value works. I would imagine that if, you know, Triple H and Shawn got disfigured to the point of recognition in that matchup, their older merch actually would increase in value. Oh, look at the stuff from before they were deformed. Anyway, they bring up the fact they have 42 championships between them. And Big Show even brings up he's the first and only guy to hold the WWE, the WCW, and the ECW heavyweight titles, and they show a slide in the background to show pictures of all three of them. And wow, that was a really bad choice, because it's just a really horrifying progression of how badly Paul White aged in that time span. Like, look at ECW title Big Show. That is him on death's door. That is scary looking. Jericho using some more big words. The Big Show putting over how large his fist is. Boom, coma time, essentially. And also this one line's great where they're talking about, you know, DX, they know their way around, you know, a ladder, or they could handle a table, and maybe they could swing a chair, but all three items in play at once, preposterous, can't be done. But then DX interrupt. The crowd pops big for Triple H and Shawn, but they are not all smiles when they make their way to the ring. And Triple H starts off by saying, you know, you talk about facts this and facts that. Well, the fact of the matter is you're boring us to death. And you know what? He may have a point with how long and drawn out this promo has gotten, but isn't that just rich for the king of the long, drawn out, boring opening segment promo to be calling this out from somebody else? He talks about how, no, but it doesn't matter that we haven't won the tag belts yet. Look at you. You're the champions and nobody likes you. Meanwhile, DX, we make history. And this line of him is really rich, where he says, we've been at the forefront of every revolution in this industry for the last 10 years. And he says, along the way, we've amassed an army, not just because of the jokes and the merchandise, but because, you know, what we believe in, because you got to grab life by the throat and just take what you want from it. Like, whoa, that's DX? I thought it was you make the rules, we'll break them. Which sounds a lot more, you know, fun and whimsical than that. Also, that is 1,000,000% a Vince McMahon line, by the way, fed to them, because that's almost the same verbiage he used talking about how he bought WCW. Shawn chimes in and says, hey, we're going to make history again in my hometown of San Antonio, where it's going to be our first TLC match, and we're going to win our first tag team titles. And on top of that, they're really excited because if and when they beat Jeri-Show, they're going to send Jericho back to SmackDown, where he technically belongs. Those belts are the only thing letting him be on Raw. And so then the fans are chanting the hey, hey, goodbye thing at Chris. And Chris's whole retort is just, well, we're still just a better tag team than you, and that's a fact. Like, he doesn't have much of a comeback at all for that. And then Triple H goes, hey, you're only going to be here for 2 more weeks. Let's make this count. So he challenges Jericho to a one-on-one matchup. And Jericho and Big Show have a conference for a bit, and their counteroffer is, okay, we'll have this matchup. And if Jericho loses, then he'll face DX next week in a handicap match. Oh boy, I know where this is going. But if Triple H loses, he's got to fight Jeri-Show in a handicap match next week. It's the same damn thing that they did like a couple of months ago in the build to what? I think SummerSlam or Night of Champions or something, where it's with John Cena and Orton was involved, and Jeri-Show did the same damn thing. Come on, guys. You cannot reuse your own material this blatantly. So when they give that counteroffer, Triple H and Shawn look kind of like sullen, and Jericho's like, I'll take that silence of yours as a yes. And then he says, he has 4 words for him, I'm never leaving Raw. So again, the heels kind of looking stronger in the promo department 2 weeks in a row. Yes, this one was a long one, but they got all the points across, and I think, you know, everyone sounded fine, but there was just a lot of verbiage, especially in that first setup, going over all the accolades and all that. All night they're plugging the upcoming Kofi Kingston, Randy Orton matchup. Finally, it's happening, one-on-one with these two after weeks of strife. And they show these highlights throughout the show of like dumping the paint on the car and like the Breakthrough Battle Royal stuff and, you know, the MSG brawl. They're really giving this a lot of build and weight going into it. And then we get a recap of the most Incredibad segment in a long time here on this show, the Mayflower Melee match. Go watch my review of the Jesse Ventura episode of Raw for more information on that. It was one of the most insane segments I've ever seen. And then we go following up with a Divas tag match. It's Melina and Gail Kim going against Maurice and Jillian. And so the faces make their entrance, and then we see the heels make their way, down the corridor, getting ready for the match. Josh Matthews ambushing them. Feels like an inappropriate time to be coming to them with a question right now, but Josh asks, how do you explain your actions from last week? And then Maurice goes, no one was going to get their hands on my Divas title and get away with it. So there's only one thing I could do. Then Josh interjects and goes, disguise yourself as the gobbledygooker and attack Melina from behind. And then Maurice, just again, dead in the eyes, she's just kind of reciting what she read off a script where she says, oh, Josh, you disappoint me. I simply provided the Trojan horse, while Melina proved to be the turkey. How do you say, Josh? Gobble, gobble. Oh, yeah, that was just an A+ delivery there. And then Jillian follows up by singing gobble, and then they walk off. Oh boy, if they wanted you to hate these characters for multiple reasons, they accomplished it with this. Did they not give Maurice more time to wake up from her nap before they filmed this pre-tape? The match begins with Melina across the ring from Maurice, who just immediately tags out to Jillian. I'm like, no! I'm so sick of seeing these two together. We get a lot of shouting from Melina, just going, I'll get you, Maurice! Match keeps going. We get the weirdest arms-free monkey flip I've ever seen. Look how much more fluid things look when Jillian is working with Gail Kim, for instance. Really makes you think. We get Melina getting the hot tag and is all over Maurice. Gail Kim takes care of Jillian. They go to the outside. We have Melina about to do her Code Red finisher out of the corner, but Maurice blocks it by grabbing the ropes, hits the French kiss DDT, and covers to win. Great! It's always nice to see the time-honored tradition of the Divas champion, in particular the babyface Divas champion, losing on TV all the time, continues thusly here. Maurice didn't even win dirty. She just hit the champion with her finisher and that was it. She outsmarted her. Great. I want to pay money to see that rematch. We get a recap of Sheamus's big night last week where he made it to the Breakthrough Battle Royal and he won and then put John Cena through a table afterward. And we see him make his way to the ring for his upcoming match. And Michael Cole on commentary talks about the tables match coming up where he says he doesn't have to pin John Cena. He doesn't have to make John Cena submit. He just has to put him through a table. And we know he can do that. And then Sheamus gets on the microphone and one of the first things he says is, I don't have to pin John Cena. I don't have to make John Cena submit. I just have to put him through a table. And I've already done that. Guys, you really got to go over your notes, when you're going over these segments here. Run a tighter ship. And he says after TLC, John Cena will take him seriously. Then out comes his opponent for the evening, Santino Marella. And I'm like, that's a really weird spot on the depth chart to be, the order of opponents Finlay has had en route to Santino. It's kind of funny to me. Just the progression felt odd. So Santino comes out and he's got a mic and he says, wow, you must be really focused in your match with John Cena because I'm your opponent tonight and you didn't even mention me, Santino says that Sheamus is jealous of him because he has skin pigmentation and can enjoy the sunshine. And he's like, why are you so upset, Sheamus? Oh, it's because you think I'm after your lucky charms. And Sheamus is just, very stone-faced, getting kind of frustrated. He says, don't worry, I'm not going to go after your cereal, even though it is magically delicious. And that does get a laugh from the audience. And he puts over he's a former 2-time Intercontinental champ. I'm like, oh my God, thanks for reminding me. They would have put that belt on anyone back then. So then he calls Sheamus Lamus, which, that did it. Now Sheamus has had too much, and now he's going to beat down on Marella. The bell never even rings, by the way. This is not an official match. And the logic of that is always funny to me, when the referee decides for the bell to ring. Sometimes it happens when the fighting is happening on the ramp, and no one's made their entrances yet. Sometimes it just happens never like this. And I hate the way commentary is treating this because this feels like something where you should be kind of shouting and yelling, hey, this is crap. This is unfair what Sheamus is doing. This isn't right. But no, Cole and Lawler are just doing this is serious, the quiet, sullen, wow. Sheamus is really, he's making himself loud and clear tonight. Like, why do you sound like you're falling asleep? You're making it sound like a sad moment here. There should be anger. There should be passion. And after, Sheamus does all his big moves and he slams Santino through the table, Lawler, like, his last words before we go to break are, oh, did Sheamus just say that's nothing compared to what he'll do to John Cena? Ooh. Like, what? Why do you think people think your product is so boring and crap when your commentary can't even deliver a simple, emotional message? That was nonsense. And speaking of nonsense, our next bit sees Jeri-Show just kind of walking down the corridor, talking about stuff, when suddenly they walk up to the guest host for the evening. About 45 minutes into this episode, Verne Troyer. And he's just sitting there, leaning up against a crate, on the phone, talking with somebody. And then after a moment, like, he acknowledges the Big Show. They shake hands because they worked together on Jingle All the Way, back in the day. So they shake hands, hey, what's up? And then Jericho wants to say hi, but Verne is just kind of fabing Jericho for some reason. So Jericho's like, oh, as usual, the guest host disrespecting me and all that. So he's yelling at him now, going, hey, Verne, I know you can hear me. And so Verne just looks up and goes, hold that thought, and turns back around, ignores him again, and goes back to the phone call until Jericho just finally leaves. And then after a moment, Verne turns to Big Show again, shakes his hand, and then Big Show leaves. What was that about? What was the point or the punchline for this bit? Because they never interact again, do these three. So you have the insane height disparity of Verne Troyer and Big Show in the same shot, and Jericho's just left out because that's all they could come up with, was Verne just ignoring him. That was so weird. And just, it wasn't funny. It wasn't interesting. So what was the point? But after the break, we do get Troyer out in front of the live crowd on stage. He's sitting all by himself on this very tall stool. He's holding the mic in his hands. And I'm like, he just kind of looks kind of sad and lonely up there, all by himself. Like, at least do something with the LED boards to make it look more filled up like a set. Or, I don't know, have the Bella Twins stand out, hang out next to him like they do for every other guest host. That was kind of a weird visual. So he's welcoming the crowd, and he says, hey, my friend Seth Green, he hosted Raw a while ago, and he seemed to have a great time, so I figured I would give it a try. And he talks about how when SummerSlam was in Los Angeles this year, how good of a time he had, and how friendly and cool all the people in WWE were to him. And he goes, but there was one guy there that really didn't sit well with me. He was really self-centered, he was egotistical, he was a real big jerk. And do you know who that is I'm talking about? And considering the last segment we just saw him in was him totally giving Chris Jericho the cold shoulder, my mind went to, obviously he's talking about Jericho because that's why he did that. He was just being rude back to him. That's kind of where my mind went. And I think a few people also shouted that in the crowd, but then he's like, The Miz! Oh! Okay, that just kind of came from out of left field. So then it sounds like he's about to repeat himself. He goes, I had a great time at WWE at SummerSlam. And then the Miz's music plays. The U.S. champion makes his way out, and he does kind of the rude thing where he's saying, Verne, I didn't see you at that party that time. Verne? Where are you, Verne? Oh, there you are. I almost stepped on you. So doing the little stuff again. And then he kneels down to get on Troyer's level. He starts apologizing to him. And he asks, what would make it feel better? Would it feel good if I gave you $1 million? And Verne's like, oh, God, this. Oh, real original, real funny. And yeah, he's doing the same fucking bit the Big Show did for Seth Green at week 3. Look, I know your hands are tied because you wanted him for Little People's Court and you can't get that. And I know it's the obvious thing to do the Austin Powers, but can we avoid the $1 million bit? Because there's so much other Dr. Evil stuff you can go with. In fact, Miz even goes on, oh, I want to dress you up and make you my mini Miz, which that's funny, like a mini Miz. That sounds great. It sounds like something he and Danhausen are going to do this year in 2026 or something. And then Verne's like, oh, well, I would do an impression of you, but I don't think you've been in any movies. Oh, shit, he cooked that motherfucker. Also, I would just, wait a couple of years, man, until he becomes the face of the Marine franchise. Who will be laughing then, asshole? Then Troyer just goes I'm a better actor than you. I'm a bigger star than you. And as we saw back at SummerSlam at the after party, I get more ladies. And like the crowd doesn't really care. Like why? Why should we care about this? So then The Miz threatens to kick Verne like a football through the ring posts like uprights. They even cut to a shot to illustrate this point. And then suddenly the strongest man alive's music plays and Mark Henry comes out to save the day. And then The Miz hits him with this really weird line of attack where he's like, oh, it's the blandest man alive, the fat bastard. And then he goes into this like, he's trying to do the fat bastard voice. It's a Sheamus impression, really. And he's trying to tell, oh, he wants Verne to get in his belly. And then he keeps going how boring and lack of a personality Mark Henry has, which of all the things to critique Henry for, it's not what I would say, but he's like, oh, you're as boring as Verne's attempt at hosting this show. And he's trying to wrap it up with his catchphrase. And Verne says, you know, I would smack that grin off your face, but I think I'll have someone else do it for you. So tonight, it'll be a match putting The Miz against Mark Henry, the man. No! Oh, great news, everybody. There's no Little People's Court, but new Mark Henry nickname lore just dropped. He's gone from the world's strongest man to the strongest man alive to the man. It's amazing. The manest man alive, Mark Henry. You know what? Actually, the manest man alive would be a badass nickname. Oh, but seriously, this segment was not great. I don't understand why they are going this route with Mark Henry. But don't worry, folks, it's gonna get worse. Well, it's finally happening. The one-on-one match pitting Randy Orton against Kofi Kingston. Well, as Kingston is making his way to the ring, he is suddenly jumped from behind by Cody Rhodes. Yes, Cody Rhodes. So he's just like glomming all over him. He's throwing him into the steps and everything. And then he's finally ushered away by the referees. Kofi is asked if he wants to continue. Yes, he does, because he is a noble babyface. So he gets in the ring and he's ready to fight. We hear Orton's theme playing, but then suddenly from behind we see Ted DiBiase run in. He chop blocks Kofi, more beat down on the leg. Then Ted's ushered away. And so then, you know, Kofi's really selling now. And the referee asks him, are you sure? Are you sure you still want to wrestle and all this? And I don't know, the way that this was being portrayed, like God, the color commentator in me really was just like, Kofi should just sit this one out. Like he'd be foolish to continue with this. But I get what they're doing. They're really just putting over how valiant a fighter he wants to be in spite of all this pain. His leg is like practically hanging off the bone the way he's selling it, you know? So Orton's music plays again. He does make his way to the ring. He's not taking his time, like walking real slow like he normally does. He's kind of hurried in his walk to the ring. So the match begins, and Orton's just all over Kofi from the get-go. He's stomping on him. He's really working the leg. And, you know, the announcers are trying to, you know, rationalize everything. Lawler's like, well, you know, Kofi decided he wanted to do this. It's Kofi's choice. You know, Kofi's choice sounds like a great name for a movie title. Finally, Kofi starts firing up out of the corner. He's throwing the punches. The fans are finally getting riled. Oh my God, like it's gonna happen. Nope, kicks him in the leg, hits him with the RKO, and that's all she wrote. Orton wins the matchup here, and he's not done though. He's not done. He wants to put more hurt on Kingston. He picks him up, he puts him on the top rope, and then does the super draping DDT, spikes him good, and man, the sell by Kingston is great because the way he flops down, his leg is like hanging on the bottom rope, and he's like splayed out like this. It's amazing. It's a great way to take that move. Lawler's commentary is so funny because the way Orton is selling with his face, he looks tortured like a tortured soul. I'm like, does he? Are you trying to imply that he is somehow conflicted in what he is doing? I don't think so. I think he's just a crazy cat, so to speak. But no, I think this was a really great segment. It's disappointing. You know, it's like, you know, it's great heat for Orton. After weeks of getting shown up by Kofi, it's a real dastardly thing that Orton has done here with like the 3-tier beatdown on him, leading to an official win, but it's certainly not an honorable one. It makes Orton look like an all-time, you know, cheater, and Kofi this really noble babyface. Like I said, very Sting-like. But as the Legacy were getting their shots in on Kofi, it makes you wonder, where are Kofi's friends, MVP and Mark Henry, who were rolling with him leading up to Survivor Series? Well, in a since removed from rebroadcast scene due to copyright issues, and I'll tell you more in a little bit, we get this backstage segment in the Verne zone where Verne is playing the latest SmackDown vs. Raw game with MVP. You have Mark Henry in kind of walking around, pacing, looking kind of down in the dumps, that The Miz called him bland and boring. And meanwhile, you have Jillian also in the office wanting to sing a song. She wants to sing her favorite Beyonce song. And so MVP is like trying to, gas up his friend Mark. Oh man, you're great, dude. Look, he's got a great personality, but when he gets in that ring, it just comes out a little differently. So that's a really weird way to explain that. But he's like, oh man, he's a great guy when you get to know him. And he wants to prove a point, but to do this, he has to apologize to everyone in advance. And so he asks Jillian, please sing your song, which is pretty funny. So then Jillian starts singing Single Ladies by Beyonce. That's why this scene has been cut. And so she's singing it and then starts dancing, and Henry starts dancing with her. They're having a good time. And then all of a sudden the camera makes this really weird move where Jillian's pushed out of the frame. Mark Henry seems to just fall apropos of nothing, because I guess apart from being boring, he's also a klutz now. And so he fell down and squished Jillian mid-dance. This is what they're trying to convey in this scene. And so then Mark and MVP are like, oh, we gotta go. And then you've got Verne going guys, I think she's dead. Oh well, and just keeps playing the game while Jillian is pancaked on the ground. Imagine you're Jillian Hall and you work really hard to get to WWE, and then as soon as they put you on the main roster, they give you a gimmick where you have a disgusting growth on your face, and then not long after that, you become a wannabe Britney Spears or Brooke Hogan, what have you, and your job is to sing really badly. And it's a stupid gimmick, but you make it work the best of your abilities. You get it over in some small way, to the point where the company even makes you a recording, you doing a Christmas recording with this gimmick. And now, more than half of your stuff is probably nowhere to be found online anymore. The company has scrubbed your stuff because of the copyright reasons of the songs they made you sing. That's kind of messed up. Then Cole and Lawler break down the TLC card, and just before the break, John Cena rolls into the arena in his nice muscle car. But I love it when before he even comes out, Lawler's like, oh, you gotta know, that's the champion, John Cena. I'm like, do I? Because okay, in hindsight, yes, he does the muscle cars and everything, but you never really see him driving much in WWE, so I thought that was kind of a weird association. Then after the break, Cena makes his way to the ring, and normally with his promos, he starts off down here and he works his way up, but here it was the inverse. He actually starts off really peeved off. He is pissed, where he goes, last week, Sheamus slammed me through a table, and he made a statement, and Sheamus claims he is the new WWE champion. And then he kind of backs off a little bit, calms down. He goes, allow me to retort. Last I checked, I'm still the WWE champion. Now, should Sheamus defeat me, then I am owed a rematch, and I will use that rematch at TLC. And he says that, and I'm like, huh? What? Is he going to wrestle twice in one night? What's that about? But then he goes to elaborate, you want a war? Let's go to war. And he wants to fight Sheamus tonight for the championship. So let's go. Oh man, are we gonna get the match 2 weeks early? But suddenly, out comes Carlito. Oh man, old rivalry of John Cena's back in the day, in the old SmackDown times. But we haven't seen Carlito in a couple of months here. He last had the feud with Primo, and then he beat him, and then was gone. By the way, is there any follow-up on Primo from last week? I guess we can only have one Cologne brother on the air at any given time in this show. So Carlito's like, look, obviously I'm not Sheamus. I don't know Sheamus, and I don't even like him, but I do like what he represents. And he's going to drop some truth bombs on Cena here. He says, nobody in the back likes you, John. No one here, nobody on SmackDown or ECW. They're tired of you, John. They're tired of you hogging the spotlight. They're tired of your wristbands and your t-shirts. When's Carlito gonna get a wristband? He's like, what about me? What about Carlito? And so he says, Sheamus is gonna do to you what we all have wanted to do. He's gonna put you through that table. He's gonna be the new WWE champion, and then the John Cena era will officially be over. And then Cena's response to this is honestly, I mean this with all sincerity, some of the best work, emotion, dialogue, delivery I've ever seen Cena do in his time in WWE here. After that, he just lowers his voice and he goes, I'm gonna be very serious with you. You have picked the wrong man at the wrong time, and your mouth is gonna back you into a fight. You don't like how I do things? Come on, step up. And you want to go to war, let's do it. So he takes off his shirt. You don't like my shirt? You don't like my wristbands? He throws them off. He wants to throw down. He says, if you come near me, I will rain hellfire down upon you. He is so ready to kill this guy right now. So then Carlito's natural response is to take a bite out of his apple, and then he's going to go for the spit, but John just pops him in the mouth. Apple goes everywhere. It's a great visual. And then Cena hits him with the attitude adjustment and takes him down pretty quickly. So, I don't think his actions necessarily matched the intensity of his words, but he neutralized the threat, so to speak. But then Sheamus's music plays, he comes out to the stage, and Cena's now begging him to come down. He's talking over Sheamus's music, like, come down, I'll do the same to you. You want some? Come get some. And so Sheamus thinks about it, but he's like, nah, and walks away. And that was the end of the segment, but honestly, that is the best Cena has looked in weeks. I hated the build to Survivor Series and how goofy they made the championship build there. And so now things can get serious again. And I like the fact they kind of used that online, sentiment towards Cena against him in storyline here. They're not doing that very explicitly yet. But this is kind of the way they do that. So Carlito's kind of the voice of the people in that way too, to the people who have that feeling for John Cena. Then after the break, Verne Troyer back on stage, and he's got an outfit change. And he's going to introduce two of his homies, two of his bros in MVP and Mark Henry. And boy, this is a sad sign of the times for Mark here, because he comes out and he does that arms thing, the up and down he does to conduct the crowd, that even a few months ago was getting great noise. It was over, and now here he's doing it tonight, and it's like, no sound, no reaction. That's what happens when you book him like a fucking chump. So this, by the way, is MVP's idea to show that Mark Henry has a personality. Keep this in mind. So he starts off, does MVP, with a little rap of his own, where he does some rhymes and does that to segue into the world's strongest man, Mark Henry. He's gonna do a rap. All right, so we have like a beat playing, and MVP's cheering him on. Mark's doing some clapping. He's going several bars without saying anything yet. I think he's just thinking real hard about what he's gonna say. And these raps, you can't call them rhymes because they barely rhyme. It's awful. It's just the worst. I'll try and read to you what he wrote here because it's not great. He goes, only 5 in this industry have had my tenure. Miz, if you step to me, I'm gonna end ya. I'm on USA. I got stars like Verne and my man MVP on my side, and there's nowhere Miz can hide. Come on now! This is Raw, not the real world. Miz, you better run, because I tell you one thing, everything that I say and everything that I do, you people in Baltimore know that Mark Henry is about to go. Oh my God. This is worse for Mark Henry's character than getting spooked by Sammy the transvestite going, oh sweet Jesus, you've got a penis. This was worse than that. I don't know what they were thinking that this was going to be good for Mark Henry, because you cut to the crowd, they're laughing. They are laughing at this man. He is dying out there, and they are, this is awful. This is character assassination for Mark Henry. Think of the broad spectrum of rapping gimmicks in wrestling. There's R-Truth, there's PN News, PG-13, Road Dogg. I'm not entirely sure if he counts in the purest sense. Like Derice, for instance. Think of that. And Mark Henry exists nowhere in that spectrum. He is outside the bottom tier. I don't know whose idea this was. And then my favorite part of this, though, is as they're tossing to break, they're doing the somebody say ho, that part, and then they're building to the somebody, anybody, scream, that part, but it cuts to break before they say scream. So it's a somebody, anybody, fade to black. It's a call for help. That's what it really is. They're just trying, somebody scream, help us. So then after the break, it's time to go to the Miz versus Mark Henry. Match already in progress. Doesn't go very long before the Miz is cut off, jumping off the top rope. Mark catches him. Strongest slam alive. 1, 2, 3. Clean as a sheet pin and win over the United States champion. Oh, by the way, this was a non-title match. P.S. And so Verne seems to like it, at least. And so after the match, Mark goes up to the stage, and Verne's like, oh man, this is huge for you, man. You know what we need? We need to celebrate with some ladies. And then the Bella Twins theme plays, and then the Bellas come out, and there's Kelly and Eve Torres, and all the ladies just go around. They start dancing all sexy-like around Verne and Mark Henry and everything, and the camera's going, whoa, like this. And of course, you can't show the audience reacting to any of this because I think everyone would just be leaving at this point. But that's how the segment ends. Give it up for the man with no personality, everybody. The guy who can't dance without falling on people and who also can't rap. Woo! Let's give this guy a push for the U.S. title. Are you fucking kidding me? This is the worst. We find out that next week's guest host is going to be Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban. And then we go to the DX zone. We see Triple H getting ready for his match, but he does look a bit perturbed. He's talking about how he had a strange dream last night where a little man in a little suit gave them a piece of paper and sent them to Little People's Court. And then Sean goes, oh my God, I had the same dream. And so they both go, oh, well, that's strange. Well, I guess it's good to know that it was both a figment of our imaginations. So that's how they're going to explain away what happened last week when they said Little People's Court next week. But then suddenly in comes Hornswoggle, who is now wearing a suit of his own, and he's talking to them in his usual gibberish. But now for the first time, we have subtitles on the screen where he says, gentlemen, you have ignored my pleas for legal discourse and have left me little choice but to seek further prosecution. I am disappointed in you. And then HBK, kind of a callback to his I Speak Jive reference from years ago where he says, I speak leprechaun, and he says, you got nothing on us, Hornswoggle. And they walk off, and Triple H just goes, nothing. And then Swoggle just kind of babbles at them, good day, as they leave, which that was funny. And then the scene ends with Verne rolling up in his scooter and kind of looking off at DX, and he goes to Swoggle and says, man, you should just sue them for everything, man. And they do a fist bump, and that was it. I'm sure they had a lot more in mind what they were going to do with Verne Troyer this week on the show. But man, this whole legal arc between Hornswoggle and DX, you can retcon last week away all you want, but real ones remember, people with eyes remember, and so it just makes everything more confusing than it already was, which is to say it was a lot. It makes less sense than before, it made no sense, and now it's even less sense than that. But now it's time for the main event. Triple H versus Chris Jericho, one-on-one. And they bring up, it's actually the third time in 7 years this matchup has happened at one-on-one, which is kind of a neat stat. And also they bring up the stipulation again. The loser has to take on the tag team in a handicap match the following week. And Shawn Michaels joins the guys on commentary to begin with. And then about a minute in, the Big Show hymns up and he arrives and he joins commentary as well. So we get a lot of arguing between he and Shawn during the match itself. It's just weird to hear them framing this as who's the greatest tag team of all time when no one would think this is what this match is about. But the arguing between Show and Shawn is kind of funny, where Show just gets exasperated. He's like, I'm going to slam you through a table so hard, man. And there's great back and forth with Triple H and Jericho, by the way. They have a good match. And there's a great line where Big Show's talking as the Triple H is getting his spine buster. It's like, two brilliant superstars, but the thing is, DX is, oh no! And so the spine buster happens. He's firing up, but the Big Show gets up, and there's he and Shawn Michaels tussle on the outside. Referee's distracted by Shawn being out. Big Show KO punches Triple H. He gets ejected. While that's happening, Shawn Michaels super kicks Jericho behind the referee's back. He gets ejected, and so we get a double down between Triple H and Jericho, done in a pretty clever way. They both get up at the 9 count. We get a lot of nice counters upon counters leading into the finish, where Triple H throws Jericho into not an exposed turnbuckle in the corner, just the padded kind, and that's enough to disable Jericho, because we get the schoolboy pin, 1, 2, 3, and Triple H wins. Holy shit! He didn't even have to use the pedigree to beat him. That was unbelievable. Tell us how you really feel, guys. So then afterward, Shawn and Triple H are on stage. They remind Jericho he's got, 1 week left here on Raw. So, if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you and all that. And then just before it wraps up, Michael Cole signs off, and then you see DX pose, and Lawler just goes, yeah, before it fades to black. Man, they definitely subverted my expectations for this one. I swore it was going to be the same thing as last time where, oh, of course, Triple H is going to be playing from behind next week in the handicap match. But hey, we're actually going to get the heel's going to be in that position this time. So I'm curious how that's actually going to play out. At least the match itself was fine. And that's going to do it for this episode of Raw. And let's just say after the last couple of weeks, I was definitely lulled into a false sense of security. I'm going to give this one 1.5 out of 5. It's mind-boggling to me just how often this company would, and how frequently they would go to these booking tropes. Not even like good ones either, bad booking tropes. And some of the choices they make to try and like get their idea of getting wrestlers over. I don't know how fans are going to support people who are supposed to be baby faces but are also booked as like cowards and losers and klutzes and people who are boring and have no personality. And another big issue with this show was their handling of the guest host. I'm going to give Verne Troyer a 0 out of 5, although it's not entirely his fault. Like I said, they obviously had an idea with booking him to go with Little People's Court. But when Little People's Court gets pushed back and they obviously can't rebook Verne, like, what are they going to do? They got to try and do something to work around it, but there's something was so just bland and paint by numbers, uninspired. Like, do something fun and interesting with your guest host. Just don't have like, oh, a bunch of ladies dancing around him isn't really fun necessarily, and him being the mediator for Mark Henry and MVP doesn't seem very fun or interesting. So now it just feels like, well, WWE's got this little person phase they're working through. They got Hornswoggle, they got Verne Troyer. There's something about Little People's Court, but that's not going to happen for weeks down the line. This is just what they're into now. But now it's time to see where Mr. Troyer sits among the all-time guest host rankings 23 weeks in. And like I said at the top of this video, I still kind of reeling over the news of the passing of Kyle Busch, but I am proud to say that he is no longer, alongside Joey Logano, the worst guest host in Raw history. That distinction now goes to Mr. Verne Troyer. Maybe if he was involved in Little People's Court, things might have been different, but them's the breaks. He was, again, not very well used, and the episode he was on was dog shit. Again, not entirely his fault, but that's the way things crumble here on Guest Host Raw. But what did you think of Verne's performance this week on Raw, and how about this review? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and hit the bell icon for all the notifications. Don't forget, next time it's Mark Cuban at the helm, so we'll see how he handles things as we are 1 week away from TLC. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you there next time on Guest Host Raw.